We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies.
Kamala Harris, she's the original hot tuah girl. That's the way she got where she is.
Conservatives are one of two things, right? They're either highly uneducated or they're bad people.
The woke ladies at The View are actually right for once. The wrong way to criticize Kamala Harris, and a TikToker explains why he thinks all conservatives are just evil? All this and so much more is coming up on today's episode of Brad vs. Everyone, my daily podcast where I take on the craziest ideas from across our politics and across the internet from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and sticking around. And regardless, do remember to hit that like button and comment with your thoughts as we go along. I do read the comments and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. Now, without any further ado, let's check in on our friends over on The View, the daytime ABC News talk show hosted by a group of female political commentators that I usually disagree with and find not particularly insightful, shall we say. But I have to admit that I found their commentary and arguments agreeable in one recent segment discussing the new Republican vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, and remarks he's made about childless women in the past. Let's take a listen to that clip.
Rumors are growing that Republicans, are second-guessing their VP choice.
Oh, yeah.
And resurfaced with a video of J.D. Vance, and it's not really helping him connect with a lot of voters. Take a look.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
Sir,
Wow.
there are people who have chosen not to have children for whatever reason. There are people who want to have children who cannot. How dare you? You never had a baby. Your wife had a baby, but you never had a baby. So you know nothing about this. And how dare you? And women, you heard how he thinks of you.
It's not just J.D. Vance. We've seen this kind of commentary criticizing Democrats who don't have children coming from other influential people in his faction of the Republican Party. For example, Blake Masters, the former candidate, tweeted, "Political leaders should have children. Certainly, they should at least be married. If you aren't running or can't run a household of your own, how can you relate to a constituency of families or govern wisely with respect to future generations? Skin in the game matters." The conservative lawyer Will Chamberlain also tweeted in a viral tweet that's now received nearly 14 million views, really simple, under-discussed reason why Kamala Harris shouldn't be president. No children. He added in a series of follow-up tweets, and no, becoming a step-parent to older teenagers doesn't count. The concerns of parents and families will always be abstract to her. Yikes. Guys, Republicans, this is not a good argument, either on its merits or politically, to be making. First and foremost, there are lots of reasons that people don't have children, and it's not always a choice. Many people struggle with infertility or different issues, or don't find the right life partner until too late in life to have kids, and they feel deep hurt about that. So to use that against them and to say that it somehow disqualifies them from public office is incredibly tone deaf and understandably hurtful. And I really have to reject this assertion that because Kamala Harris doesn't have children of her own, she doesn't care about the future of America. First of all, as has been noted, she is a stepmother to 2 children who are now adults and has apparently a very close and impactful relationship with them, and I'm sure she cares a lot about the world they're going to grow up in. But more importantly, even people without kids don't want the world to decline, don't lack concern for the future of humankind. This is a really bizarre notion. Of course, people without children still care about the world they're leaving behind and the future. And also, guys, a lot of people with children don't care. Let's be honest, a lot of people are shitty parents and barely even take care of their own kids, let alone worry about the world they're leaving to future generations. That's one of the things that's really frustrating about this criticism to me, is that when I think of the political leaders who have overseen the decline of our American federal government and have, for example, buried us in debt that will haunt future generations, almost all of them have kids. George Bush, Obama, Joe Biden, Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump, they all have kids. That didn't stop them. That didn't make them somehow concerned about future generations. They still buried them in trillions of dollars in debt, mortgaged their financial future. So this idea that having children is the only way to have skin in the game is not really borne out by how actual politicians who do have children have behaved. They still have a strong incentive to do whatever will help them in that moment, and they don't seem particularly bothered about future generations or the world they're leaving behind, whether they have kids or not. Ultimately, having kids or not is just a personal decision that people make, and it's not always a decision, like I mentioned, so you should really tread carefully. But attacking people who don't have kids as childless cat ladies, which is not a fair description of Kamala Harris, whether you love her or hate her, and I'm pretty much opposed to almost everything she believes in, is so off base, and you're just going after her personally. You're not making any valid arguments about her substance or what she would do with the country. It's cheap demagoguery, and it's really going to land poorly with female voters and just women in general, and a lot of men too. As the Republican political commentator Meghan McCain pointed out on Twitter, I have been trying to warn every conservative man I know. These JD comments are activating women across all sides, including my most conservative Trump-supporting friends. These comments have caused real pain and are just innately unchristian. This is not who we are. Unless you guys think that I'm just taking one clip of JD Vance out of context, I went and I did a little bit of digging, and he's made similar remarks over the years, suggesting that people with kids are inherently more suited to wield political power or governance than childless people. To be fair, people are crying sexism, but he has applied this criticism to men in the past, so I wouldn't necessarily go there, but I still think it's a bit tone deaf in the eyes of many women to be attacking a female politician for not having children of her own. More importantly, it's just not substantive. It's actually just an ad hominem, because again, having kids or not really has very little bearing, if any at all, on whether a politician does what's in the best interests of future generations, or whether their perspective is shaped to have skin in the game for what they leave behind for their kids. That's just nonsense. I'm sorry. We have seen time and time again politicians with children and grandchildren nonetheless screw over future generations and not give a damn. Yet some of our greatest leaders in American history didn't actually have children. George Washington, our very first president, who made the remarkable selfless decision to abstain from a third term and set a precedent only to be later undermined by FDR, but essentially set the mold that presidents would only serve 2 terms and not become kings. George Washington had no children, yet he still made the noble decision to limit his own power and set a standard for future presidents that would carry on in America long after his death, even though it came at the expense of his own power and his own self-interest. To my Republican friends, this is just not the right line of attack against Kamala Harris. You are making yourself look heartless and out of touch and making her look more sympathetic. Other than that, keep up the great work, I guess. I mean, y'all know you're wildin' because you literally have me agreeing with The View. Staying on how not to criticize Kamala Harris, I want to show you guys a clip from Fox News where a guest makes a very crude comment about Kamala Harris that is, unfortunately, going viral.
The future looks kind of dim for the Democrats here, but this is no shocker either. Kamala Harris, she's the original tuah girl. That's the way she got where she is, and the party's going downhill if it's in her hands.
That was tough. That was harsh.
This guy's named Alec Lace. Ironically, he's the host of something called First Class Fatherhood, and he was on Fox Business with my friends Dagan and Sean, who, to be clear, definitely do not endorse this sentiment. If you don't understand the reference, the tuah girl references a viral meme of a girl describing how she gives blowjobs that went very viral a few weeks back.
One move in bed that makes a man go crazy every time.
Oh, you gotta give him that tuah and spit on that thing. You get me?
So, this guy is on national television saying Kamala Harris just slept her way to the top, to the vice presidency and now the presidency or presidential candidacy. Republicans, this too is extremely crude. Just don't do this. Just don't go there. It's totally irrelevant to what she actually stands for and what she's going to do for this country. Focus on that, please. And it's also not even really true. Yes, she dated an influential guy in California politics back when she was getting started in her career, but unlike what you see online oftenly referenced, she did not sleep with a married man. It wasn't an affair. He was separated from his wife and they dated publicly. It wasn't some covert secret. And did those connections maybe help her in some way to get her first elected office? I don't know, perhaps, but she still went on to win statewide, to become state attorney general, to win statewide, to become a senator. Then this had nothing to do with her being selected as vice president, and it's just total nonsense. This was never a decisive or significant factor in her elections, and connections and relationships, they do help influence these things all the time. It's not particularly unique or unusual. And this is the kind of criticism you would absolutely never see targeted at a male politician. I have to acknowledge that. So guys, Kamala Harris has given us so much to criticize her on. Her far-left ideas, she was rated as the most liberal senator in 2019, her constant cringeworthy memes and gaffes, and the pretty disastrous record of the Biden-Harris administration in office. Everything from overseeing inflation to a border crisis to a failed withdrawal from Afghanistan that got many U.S. service members unnecessarily killed. There's literally so much ample ground to go after her on. Don't descend into this cheap shot, gross territory. Please don't. Because every time you do, you are giving liberal media and progressive commentators the exact ammunition they're looking for to paint all Republicans as sexist and out of touch, even though that's not true. So that's my message to the right for this week. Go after Kamala all you want, but don't do it in a crude manner that can be portrayed and perceived as sexist and offensive to women. We'll leave it there for now, and next up, it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the clock out.
Pronoun of the day is slug.
Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do remember to hit that like button to reward my suffering. And now, let's listen to one TikToker explain why conservatives are all just bad people, or ignorant, I guess.
Conservatives are one of two things, right? They're either highly uneducated or they're bad people. And you might be like, whoa, buddy. But the truth is, it's true. Let me explain. If you don't know the facts, you might come to a conservative viewpoint because you just genuinely don't have an understanding of the nuances of the policy. And so you're like, end up a conservative. And I have a lot of empathy for those people. And I think that's the education system failing us, right? But if you know all of your facts, if you know everything about an issue, on pretty much any issue, and you come to a conservative viewpoint, that means you lack empathy for some marginalized group every time. Like, it's inherent to the conservative way of. But when you know the facts and you choose to be conservative, that is like hate, usually. That is, or at the very least, a lack of empathy. Like, I think a lot of it is willful ignorance, right? A lot of it is, I see all these facts, but I don't like them, so I'm going to choose not to believe them. That doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. That just makes you a f***ing idiot. Like, that makes you a moron who doesn't value objectivity. Like, and then you, like, I don't know what to do with those people, right? I don't know what to do with those people. Like, just them, right? I don't know. But if you do believe all the facts, I think abortion is a really good example. If you look at all the facts of abortion and you still vote for a policy that bans abortion and you know what it will do to women and you vote for that, you are going to hell, dude. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, you're a bad person.
Well, he just seems lovely. And now that he's cussed at me so many times, I really have no choice but to change all my opinions, right? That's how this works. You see this kind of message on TikTok, unfortunately, frequently, where they suggest, without a hint of irony or a hint of humility, that people who disagree with them or hold different viewpoints are just evil or bad, or they must just be hopelessly ignorant. But nobody could possibly be educated or informed, yet reach different conclusions than them, the brilliant, omniscient people, of course. And it is the condescension that makes me honestly want to pull my hair out. They're essentially saying that reality is just progressive, and anybody who isn't a hard leftist must just be uninformed about the objective truth. Babe, your delulu is showing. Your opinions are not objective truth. They are not proven by factual reality. The questions that divide people in politics are often intricate and complex disputes over not just empirical evidence or factual disputes, but over morality, over competing sets of values, competing claims, individualism versus communitarianism, equality versus equity, freedom versus safety, authority versus liberty. Very, very few of the questions that deeply divide us in our politics are easy questions. And it requires a total lack of intellectual humility to actually think otherwise. It's crazy to me that he cites abortion, of all the issues, as an example that's supposedly completely black and white if you just understand the facts. Excuse me, what? Abortion is an incredibly complex issue that goes down to the very core of what constitutes a human life. It is a fundamentally religious and moral and spiritual and human dispute. I have friends who land on either side of the question, and I can understand why. In neither case does it make them evil or mean they're going to hell, or does it mean they're ignorant. In fact, it's a complicated question of medical and personal ethics. And if you only see these complicated issues as totally black and white, then it is you that is ignorant. You have not spent enough time actually listening to thoughtful and smart people on the opposite side and trying to understand why they believe what they believe. Because it's not that they're unaware of basic facts, babe. So I find this argument honestly just reprehensible and so obnoxious. But even just from an argument standpoint, a rhetoric standpoint, a persuasive standpoint, babe, this ain't it. You are never going to win anyone over to your side by simply telling them they're evil for disagreeing with you. I actually saw an interesting clip from the Democratic Transportation Secretary and politician Pete Buttigieg, where he was asked how he'd bridge the gap between him and Mike Johnson, the hardcore social conservative Republican Speaker of the House. And he said that he would invite him over and have him over for dinner and show him how his family works and how it's a loving place and that they're not so different after all. Now, maybe he was just trying to appeal to the cameras and seem like a really good guy, but I found that clip compelling. And I do agree that that's how you actually often can reach people or meet in the middle or maybe encourage them to see a different way by connecting with them on a human level, by approaching them with an open mind, not by condemning them with a closed fist and calling them names and telling them they're evil. That only makes people retreat into their camp, to their echo chamber, and makes them feel defensive, which is the exact opposite of how you actually change someone's mind. So videos like this aren't remotely persuasive. All they do is pander to people who already completely agree with you for likes and views, while actually isolating your movement and your ideas from the people you actually need to convince of them. Other than that, you're doing amazing, sweetie. Keep it up. All right, guys, I got to leave it there for TikTok for today because that shit pissed me off, honestly. So now I'll read a few of your comments from the last episode before we wrap up for today. One person writes, I literally spit out my tea when Van Jones said the word incompetent was a slur. WTH? Yeah, look, my expectations are low for mainstream media at this point. They really are. But I still would have thought it was too much, even for CNN, that they would have two people on air actually arguing that calling a politician incompetent is racist. But here we are in 2024. This is the absolute state of the mainstream media. Another person writes, if incompetent is a slur to black women, please tell that to all the people who called the director of the Secret Service incompetent because they seemed to not notice she was white. Don't they all look silly for choosing the wrong insult? Exactly. I mean, calling people incompetent, it just happens all the time in politics. It's what you say when you think somebody's doing a bad job. It's not racist. It's not racially charged. This is all just ridiculous nonsense. Another person writes, I love that Brad versus everyone is now a part of my daily routine. This man does not miss. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love having you guys as a part of my daily routine as well. Another person writes, Brad, you know that the non-binary baristas are never incompetent. LOL. Yeah, you're right. That was a bad example on my part. Non-binary baristas are not incompetent. They make the absolute most fire lattes on earth. Another person writes, keep up the great work, Brad. I don't always agree with you, but I always respect anyone that thinks for themselves based on the facts. As far as your thoughts on immigration, I'm wondering if you think our economy could handle those 10 million or so immigrants here illegally that you'd like to have a path to citizenship. So this is a totally valid question. I will just clarify that I said a path to legal status, which is not the same thing as a path to citizenship. As for how our economy could absorb them, I actually think that's kind of a moot point because they already are absorbed into our economy. They're not unemployed. Most of them are already working in jobs under the table or over the table in many states that don't actually check or enforce that. So I don't really see that as a big concern because they're already largely integrated into our economy. And in fact, you actually have to look at it from the other end. If they were all, over the course of a few months, ripped away and deported out of our country, that'd leave a huge gap in our labor force that's currently performing some pretty important jobs that not a lot of Americans would want to do. Another person says, Brad, 0 mainstream Republicans want to do away with interracial marriage. Guess Brad fell asleep when the public saw J.D. Vance's wife. No, I didn't. I did see some people being very racist, and I actually condemned it on Twitter about J.D. Vance's wife. But that was mostly anonymous far-right Twitter accounts, dude. It wasn't in real life. It was find me a single elected Republican politician, a single conservative media personality, anybody who actually voiced opposition to that. Anonymous frog profiles on Twitter who jerk off to Nick Fuentes' live streams don't count. All right, everybody, that's it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thanks so much for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button and comment with your thoughts. I do read the comments and I love hearing from you guys. And with that, we'll talk again tomorrow.